15 years ago, my life fell apart. I thought I had finally rebuilt everything, moved on, and left the shattered pieces of my past behind me. But last week, something happened that brought it all rushing back. Out of nowhere, my ex-wife, the woman who tore my life apart with her scandalous affair, reached out to me. 15 years of silence, and now she wants to talk. The email she sent shook me to my core, and even as I sit here trying to put my thoughts together, I can't help but feel like my past is clawing its way back into my present. Back then, I was married to Laura, a woman I thought was my soulmate. She was everything to me. Beautiful, smart, and with a laugh that could brighten even my darkest days. We had been married for nearly 8 years, and I thought we were building something unbreakable. I worked hard, too hard probably, as a project manager at a growing company, pulling long hours to make sure we could afford the life she always dreamed of. Laura deserved the best, and I was determined to give it to her. But it wasn't enough. It never was. Looking back now, I realize the signs were there long before it all came crashing down. The late nights she spent with friends, the sudden need for privacy with her phone, the way she started pulling away from me emotionally. It all added up to something I didn't want to see. I told myself she was just stressed, that maybe I wasn't giving her enough attention. I even started cutting back at work, hoping that spending more time at home would bring us closer again. It didn't. The truth came out in the most humiliating way possible. One evening, I was running errands when I realized I had forgotten my wallet at home. When I walked into our house unexpectedly, I heard laughter. Her laughter. It wasn't the kind of laughter we shared anymore. It was different, lighter, carefree. I followed the sound to the living room, and there she was, curled up on the couch with another man. He was touching her face, whispering something in her ear, and she looked happy. Happier than she had with me in years. They didn't even notice me at first. I stood there, frozen, my heart pounding in my chest, until I managed to choke out, "What the hell is going on?" Laura's head snapped toward me, and for a split second, there was panic in her eyes. But then she recovered, as if she had been preparing for this moment. She stood up, crossed her arms, and said, "We need to talk." What followed was the most surreal conversation of my life. She admitted everything. The man, whose name was David, was married too. They had been seeing each other for nearly a year. "You don't make me happy anymore," she told me, as if that justified it all. "David understands me in a way you never could." She said it so casually, like it wasn't tearing my world apart. I was furious, devastated, and completely blindsided. I didn't yell or scream. I couldn't even form coherent sentences. I just walked out. For days, I couldn't eat or sleep. When I finally mustered the courage to confront her again, she had already made her decision. She was leaving. "I deserve to be happy," she said, as if her happiness was the only thing that mattered. And just like that, she was gone. The next few years were a blur of pain and anger. I went through the motions, but I wasn't really living. Therapy helped, but it was a long road to recovery. Eventually, I moved on. I rebuilt my life, started my own business, and even found love again. Her name was Ellen, and for 15 years, I kept Laura in the past, where she belonged, or so I thought. Then last week, I opened my email to find her name staring back at me. The subject line read, "I need to talk to you." I hesitated before opening it, my stomach churning with a mix of anger and dread. The email was short and vague. but it was enough to turn my world upside down. She said she was sorry for how things ended and that she needed to see me. She claimed it was important, something she couldn't explain in writing. I didn't know what to think. Why now, after all these years? What could she possibly have to say that mattered? I showed the email to Ellen, who was surprisingly supportive. "Maybe hearing her out will help you finally let go of the anger," she said. But I wasn't sure I wanted to hear what Laura had to say. Part of me wanted to delete the email and pretend it never happened. But another part, the part that still carried the scars of her betrayal, needed answers. Against my better judgment, I replied. I kept it short, agreeing to meet her but setting strict boundaries. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me or drag me back into her mess. We agreed to meet at a cafe in the city this weekend. Now, as the day approached, I can't shake the feeling that this meeting is going to change everything again. What could she possibly want after all this time? Does she think I've forgotten? Forgiven? I don't know if I'm ready for this. But one thing is certain. Laura's reappearance in my life has stirred up emotions I thought I had buried for good. The day of the meeting arrived, and I felt like my nerves were going to get the best of me. I hadn't slept much the night before, my mind replaying memories I didn't want to relive. As I stood in front of the mirror that morning, adjusting my tie, Ellen gave me a reassuring smile. "You've got this," she said softly. Her words helped, but I couldn't shake the unease growing in my chest. The cafe we had agreed to meet at was a small, quiet place in the city. Neutral territory, I guess. I arrived 10 minutes early, hoping to gather my thoughts before facing Laura. The place smelled of freshly brewed coffee and warm pastries, but even the comforting aroma couldn't calm me down. I sat at a corner table with a clear view of the entrance and waited. She walked in 5 minutes late. Laura, for a moment, I barely recognized her. Time had softened her features, but the confident air she once carried was gone. She looked tired, worn down, and nervous. That was new. Laura was never nervous. She spotted me and offered a tentative smile before making her way to the table. "Hi," she said, her voice quieter than I remembered. "Hi," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. There was an awkward pause as she sat down and fidgeted with the strap of her purse. I wasn't going to make this easy for her. If she wanted to talk, she'd have to start. "I wasn't sure you'd come," she finally said, looking up at me. "Neither was I admitted. She sighed, her shoulders slumping slightly. "Thank you for meeting me. I know I'm probably the last person you want to see." "You're not wrong," I said bluntly. "Why now, Laura? Why after all this time?" She winced at my words, but nodded as if she expected them. I deserve that. Honestly, I don't even know where to begin. I need to say I'm sorry. I raised an eyebrow. 15 years later, and now you're sorry? Her eyes filled with tears, but she quickly blinked them away. I know how it sounds. I know I hurt you in ways I can never undo. I've spent years trying to come to terms with what I did to you, to myself. And I know I have no right to ask for forgiveness. But I needed to tell you. Her words didn't move me. Not yet. I had spent too many nights drowning in the pain she caused to let her crocodile tears undo me now. Is that it? You just wanted to apologize? Because you could have sent another email. She shook her head. No, there's more. Her voice broke, and she looked away for a moment before continuing. I made so many mistakes, and I paid for them. David, He wasn't who I thought he was. I scoffed. Is that supposed to make me feel better? No, she said quickly. It's not about that. It's about... She hesitated, taking a shaky breath. David left me a few years after we got together. He found someone else, someone younger, prettier, and just better. He threw me away like I was nothing. I didn't say anything. What was there to say? She made her bed, and now she was lying in it. For years I've been trying to rebuild my life, she continued, her voice trembling. But it hasn't been easy. I lost everything, my job, my home, my sense of self. And I know it's my fault. I know I don't deserve your sympathy or anything else. But I realized I couldn't keep living with the weight of what I did to you. To us. Her words hung in the air, but they didn't have the impact she seemed to hope for. I felt nothing, maybe some pity, but certainly not the satisfaction she seemed to think her suffering would bring me. Laura, I said, my tone firm. You reaching out to me now doesn't change anything. You hurt me in ways I can't even begin to explain. And while I appreciate the apology, it doesn't erase the past. She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. I know. I needed you to know that I'm sorry. Truly. I sighed, leaning back in my chair. What do you really want, Laura? Because I don't believe you came here just to apologize. There's something else, isn't there? Her face crumbled, and for a moment, I thought she might break down completely. But then she composed herself, taking a deep breath. There is, she admitted. I need your help. Those words hit me like a punch to the gut. My help, after everything she did. She had the audacity to ask for my help. What kind of help? I asked coldly, my patience wearing thin. She hesitated, clearly struggling to find the right words. It's my daughter, she finally said. She's sick, and I can't afford the treatment she needs. Her daughter? Of course. I vaguely remembered hearing through the grapevine that she'd had a child after she and David split. But this was something else entirely. And you thought I'd be the one to help you? I asked incredulously. Why would you even think that? Because you're a good person, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. You always were, and I know I don't deserve it. But I'm desperate. I stared at her, my mind racing. The nerve of her to come back into my life, to dredge up all this pain, and then to ask me for something so monumental. It was almost laughable. But as I sat there, watching the tears stream down her face, I felt the storm brewing inside me. I didn't know what to say, what to think. All I knew was that this meeting was only the beginning of something I hadn't seen coming. Something that would change everything again. I sat there, staring at Laura as her words sank in. She needed my help. My help. The woman who tore my life apart, who betrayed me and left me to pick up the pieces, now sat in front of me, asking for something I didn't even think I could give. My initial instinct was to laugh, not out of humor, but disbelief. Laura, I finally said, my voice steady but sharp. Do you realize what you're asking me? She nodded, her hands trembling as she gripped the edge of the table. I do, and I wouldn't be here if I wasn't out of options. Please, just hear me out. I sighed, running a hand through my hair as I leaned back in my chair. I'm listening. She took a deep breath, her voice faltering slightly as she began to speak. Her name is Lily. She's 12 years old, and she's everything to me. But about 6 months ago, she started getting sick, really sick. We thought it was just the flu, but then the test came back, and it's leukemia. stomach dropped. I hadn't expected this. I thought maybe she was here to ask for money or some favor that wouldn't require me to care. But this, a sick child, it was a weight I hadn't anticipated. She needs treatment, Laura continued, tears streaming down her face. Chemo, medication, everything. I've sold everything I could, my car, my jewelry, anything of value. But it's not enough, and the insurance barely covers half of it. I leaned forward, my eyes narrowing. And where's David in all this? Shouldn't he be the one helping you? Her face twisted into a look of pain and anger. David left us years ago. He doesn't even acknowledge Lily. He wanted nothing to do with her once she was born. He said she was too much responsibility. I clenched my jaw, trying to suppress the surge of anger I felt. Not for Laura, but for the man who had been her partner in betrayal. David, the same man she had thrown everything away for. It seemed fitting in a way that he had abandoned her. But the collateral damage of his actions now had a name. Lily. I exhaled slowly, trying to focus. So, let me get this straight. You're here because you need money for your daughter's treatment, and you think I can provide that? Yes, she said, her voice barely audible. I don't know who else to turn to. I've already tried everything, loans, charities, even crowdfunding. Nothing is enough, and I thought maybe you could help. I shook my head, leaning back again. You thought wrong, Laura. I'm not a bank. I'm not your safety net. Do you have any idea what it took for me to rebuild my life after what you did? And now you're sitting here asking me to save you. Do you even hear yourself? Her tears came harder now, but she didn't back down. I'm not asking you to save me, she said, her voice breaking. I'm asking you to save her. She's innocent in all of this. She didn't ask for this life, for my mistakes. Please, just think about it. I stared at her, my heart torn between anger and something I didn't want to admit, sympathy. I wanted to walk away, to tell her to fix her own mess and leave me out of it. But the image of a 12-year-old girl, sick and helpless, wouldn't leave my mind. Does she know? I asked. After a long pause, Laura looked at me, confused. No. What about me? About what happened between us? She hesitated, and then shook her head. No, I've never told her. She doesn't even know you exist. That stung more than I expected. Convenient, I said bitterly. So you erased me from your life completely. It wasn't like that, she protested. I thought it was better this way, cleaner for both of us. Cleaner? I repeated, shaking my head. You don't get to rewrite history and then come crawling back when it suits you. I'm not rewriting anything, she snapped, her voice rising for the first time. I'm just trying to do what's right for my daughter. For once in my life, I'm trying to do the right thing. Her outburst caught me off guard. For a moment, I saw a glimpse of the woman I had once loved. The fire in her eyes that had drawn me to her all those years ago. But it wasn't enough to erase the past. I stood up, grabbing my coat. I need time to think about this, I said flatly. Her eyes widened, panic flashing across her face. Please don't walk away, she pleaded. I'm not saying no, I said, my tone firm, but I'm not saying yes either. I need to figure out what this means for me, for you, for everyone involved. I'll let you know. She nodded reluctantly, wiping her tears as she stood up. Thank you. That's all I can ask. I didn't respond as I walked out of the cafe. I felt a whirlwind of emotions swirling inside me. Anger, confusion, pity, and something else. I didn't know what I was going to do. But one thing was clear. My past wasn't finished with me yet. The drive home from the cafe felt like it took an eternity. My hands gripped the steering wheel tightly as I replayed the conversation over and over in my head. Laura's face, her tears, her plea. It was all too much. I had spent years burying the pain she caused, and now she was asking me to dig it all up again, not for her, but for her daughter. A daughter I'd never met, a daughter I had no connection to. When I got home, Ellen was waiting for me in the kitchen. She had that look on her face, the one that said she'd been worrying the entire time I was gone. "How did it go?" she asked softly, setting down the tea she'd been holding. I dropped my coat on the back of a chair. It was a lot. She needs money for her daughter's treatment. She has leukemia. Ellen's eyes widened in surprise, and then they softened. "Oh no, that's awful." "Yeah," I muttered, running a hand through my hair. "She's desperate. Apparently the guy she left me for walked out on her years ago, and now she's struggling to make ends meet. And for some reason, she thought I was the solution." Ellen leaned against the counter, her expression thoughtful. "And what did you say?" "I told her I'd think about it," I said, dropping into a chair. "But honestly, I don't know if I can do this. She tore my life apart, Ellen. She betrayed me, humiliated me, and left me to pick up the pieces. And now, after 15 years, she thinks I'll swoop in and save her." Ellen walked over and placed a hand on my shoulder. "It's not about saving her, though, is it? It's about her daughter, an innocent child who didn't ask for any of this." "I know," I said, my voice heavy. "But it's not that simple. Helping her would mean reopening a wound I've worked so hard to close. I don't even know if I'm strong enough to do that." Ellen knelt in front of me, her eyes filled with compassion. "You are strong enough. I know this isn't easy, and you don't owe Laura anything. But if you can help that little girl, if you can make a difference in her life, isn't it worth considering? You've always had such a big heart, and that's one of the things I love most about you." Her words hit me harder than I expected. Ellen had always been my rock, the person who reminded me of the good in the world when I couldn't see it myself. She was right. I didn't owe Laura anything. But Lily, she was innocent in all of this, caught in the crossfire of choices she didn't make. I spent the next few days wrestling with my thoughts. Part of me wanted to walk away, to let Laura deal with her own mess. But another part of me, perhaps the part Ellen had reminded me of, knew I couldn't ignore the situation entirely. I needed more information before I made any decisions. So, I reached out to Laura and asked her to meet me again. This time, I chose a park. I didn't want the claustrophobia of a cafe or the distractions of a public space. I needed room to breathe, to think. Laura arrived on time, looking even more tired than before. She sat on the bench next to me, clutching a folder in her hands. "Thank you for agreeing to see me again," she said quietly. "I need details," I said, cutting straight to the point. "If I'm going to consider helping you, I need to know everything." She nodded, opening the folder and handing me a stack of papers. "These are Lily's medical records, test results, treatment plans, everything. I wanted you to see that I'm not lying about any of this." I took the papers and glanced through them, my chest tightening as I read the grim details. Lily's diagnosis was aggressive, and the treatment she needed was expensive. Even with insurance, the out-of-pocket costs were staggering. "What's the prognosis?" I asked, my voice subdued. "It's good," Laura said, her eyes hopeful. "If she gets the treatment she needs, her chances of remission are high. But without it, Her voice trailed off, and she looked away. And you've exhausted every other option? I asked, not hiding my skepticism. She nodded. I've tried everything. Loans, grants, crowdfunding. But it's not enough. I've even taken on 3 part-time jobs just to keep us afloat. But the bills keep piling up faster than I can pay them. I set the papers down and looked at her. Why didn't you tell me about Lily sooner? If you had reached out years ago, maybe things would be different. I didn't think I had the right, she admitted. After everything I did to you, I didn't think you'd ever want to hear from me again. But now, I didn't have a choice. I leaned back on the bench, staring up at the sky. Her words felt like a punch to the gut. She was right. I probably wouldn't have wanted to hear from her. But that didn't make this situation any easier. Okay, I said after a long pause. Here's what we're going to do. I'll help. But there are going to be conditions. I'm not just handing you money. Laura looked at me with a mix of relief and apprehension. Anything. I'll agree to that now, I said, narrowing my eyes. But we'll see if you mean it. I need time to put everything together. I'll be in touch. As I walked away from the park, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Anger, sadness, pity, and even a glimmer of hope. This wasn't going to be easy, but maybe, just maybe, helping Lily could bring some closure to the wounds Laura had left behind. Or maybe it would just tear them open all over again. Over the next few days, I tried to focus on work, but my mind kept drifting back to Lily and to Laura. Every time I thought about her plea, a part of me felt angry all over again. She had the audacity to show up after all this time. But I couldn't ignore the reality. A child was suffering, and I was one of her last hopes. I spent hours drafting a plan. If I was going to help, it would be on my terms, with clear boundaries. I wasn't about to let Laura walk all over me again. I didn't want her taking advantage of my help or expecting this to mend what was irrevocably broken between us. When I called her to set up a meeting, she sounded nervous, but agreed immediately. We met again, this time in a quiet library conference room I had reserved for privacy. She walked in, clutching her purse, her eyes scanning the room as if she expected me to ambush her. "Thank you for meeting me," she said quietly. I didn't waste time on pleasantries. If I'm going to help, there are rules, non-negotiable. Once she nodded quickly, "Of course, whatever you need." I slid a piece of paper across the table toward her. "First, I'm not giving you the money directly. I'll pay the hospital or treatment facility directly to make sure it goes to Lily and only Lily." "That's fine," she said, her voice shaking. "Second," I continued, "this is a one-time thing. Don't come back asking for more. I'll help with this phase of her treatment, but after that, you're on your own." Her face fell slightly, but she nodded. "I understand." "And third," I added, my tone firm, "this doesn't change anything between us. I'm doing this for Lily, not for you. Don't think for a second that this erases what happened." Tears welled up in her eyes, but she blinked them away. "I wouldn't expect it to," she whispered. For a moment, the room was silent except for the sound of the clock ticking. I leaned back, studying her. She looked smaller than I remembered, almost fragile. But I wasn't about to let sympathy cloud my judgment. "Is there anything else I should know?" I asked. She hesitated, biting her lip. "No, that's it. I promise." "Good," I said, standing up. "I'll reach out to the hospital and make arrangements. You'll get a confirmation when it's done." She stood too, clutching her purse tightly. "Thank you," she said, her voice cracking. You don't know how much this means to me. To Lily. I didn't respond as I walked out of the room. I felt a weight settle on my chest. I had made my decision, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this was far from over. 2 days later, I contacted the hospital handling Lily's treatment. I wanted to ensure everything was above board before transferring any money. The administrator I spoke to was polite and understanding as I explained the situation. After some back and forth, they agreed to provide a detailed breakdown of the costs for Lily's treatment plan. By the end of the call, I felt slightly more at ease. It seemed straightforward. I'd cover the immediate expenses, and Laura could handle the rest on her own. But just as I was about to hang up, the administrator said something that froze me in place. It's great to see Lily's father stepping up to help. She's such a sweet girl, and she talks about you often. The words hit me like a freight train. My grip tightened on the phone. "Excuse me?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. "Lily's father," the administrator repeated, clearly confused. "I assumed that's who you were. Isn't that why you're handling this?" I ended the call abruptly, my mind racing. Father? Why would anyone think I was Lily's father? Laura hadn't mentioned anything about this, and now I was starting to suspect there was more to her story than she let on. That evening, I sat in my office, staring at the medical records Laura had given me. I flipped through them, my eyes scanning for anything I might have missed. And then, there it was. Lily's birth certificate. My breath caught in my throat when I saw the date. Lily was born just over a year after Laura left me. My heart pounded in my chest as I tried to make sense of it. Could it be possible? Could Lily be my daughter? Laura had never mentioned this. Not once in all her pleading and crying. If she had known, or worse, if she had hidden it from me, then everything I thought I knew about the situation was about to change. I didn't sleep that night. The questions swirling in my head were too overwhelming. Why hadn't she told me? Did she even know? And if she did, what kind of person keeps a father away from his child for over a decade? The next morning, I called Laura and told her to meet me immediately. My tone must have alarmed her because she didn't argue. We met at the same park, but this time I wasn't calm or collected. I was furious. "You lied to me," I said the moment she sat down. Her face went pale. "What are you talking about?" I threw the birth certificate onto the table between us. "Lily's birth date. Explain it." Laura's hands trembled as she picked up the paper. Her lips moved silently as she read, and when her eyes met mine, they were filled with panic. I can explain," she stammered. "You'd better," I said, my voice cold. "Is she my daughter?" Her silence was deafening. She looked down, unable to meet my gaze, and I felt a wave of rage rise inside me. "You've had 15 years to tell me, Laura. 15 years, and you let me believe she wasn't mine." Tears streamed down her face as she finally spoke. "I didn't know for sure," she admitted. "When I left you, I found out I was pregnant a few weeks later. But David, he convinced me she was his. He said it couldn't be yours because we hadn't been together as often, and I believed him." "You believed him?" I repeated, my voice shaking with anger. "You didn't even bother to tell me, to let me decide for myself. I didn't want to hurt you more than I already had," she said, her voice breaking. And by the time I realized he might be wrong, it felt too late. I was scared, okay? I didn't know how to face you after everything. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Her fear, her guilt, None of it justified what she had done. I stood up, unable to sit still any longer. "We're doing a DNA test," I said firmly. "If she's my daughter, I'll help her. But I'm not doing anything else until I know the truth." Laura nodded, wiping her tears. "Okay, I understand." But as I walked away, I couldn't shake the feeling that this revelation was only the beginning. If Lily was mine, everything would change. And if she wasn't, I wasn't sure I'd ever be able to forgive Laura for dragging me into this. The next week passed in excruciating silence. Laura and I agreed to a DNA test, and while we waited for the results, the weight of uncertainty hung over me like a storm cloud. I couldn't focus at work. I barely slept. Every time Ellen asked how I was doing, I could only muster a weak, "I'm fine." Ellen had been a rock through all of this, but even she was starting to feel the strain. "Whatever happens," she said one evening, placing a reassuring hand on my shoulder, "we'll face it together. You don't have to go through this alone." I nodded, grateful for her support. But deep down, I knew this was something only I could confront. If Lily was my daughter, it would reshape everything. My past, my present, and my future. Finally, the results came in. I received the call while sitting in my car during my lunch break. The woman on the other end spoke calmly, her tone neutral as she delivered the news. "The test confirms that you are Lily's biological father." I sat there in stunned silence, the words echoing in my mind. She's mine. I'm her father. I should have felt anger, betrayal, maybe even joy. But instead, I felt an overwhelming sense of loss. 15 years of missed birthdays, milestones, and memories, all because Laura made a choice that robbed me of them. I called Laura immediately. "I got the results," I said flatly. She was quiet for a moment before replying, "And she's mine." "I said you kept my daughter from me." Her breath hitched, and I could hear the guilt in her voice. "I know I did, and I'm so sorry. I was selfish and scared, and I didn't think about what it would cost you or her." "I don't care about your excuses, Laura," I snapped. "What I care about is Lily. Does she even know the truth?" "No," she admitted. "I didn't want to confuse her until we had the results, but now I'll tell her, I promise." "No," I said firmly. "I'll tell her. I don't trust you to handle this the right way. You've done enough damage." Laura agreed, and we arranged for me to meet Lily that weekend. As I hung up, a wave of anxiety washed over me. How do you introduce yourself to your own child after 15 years of being a stranger? The day of the meeting, I arrived at Laura's apartment feeling like I was walking into a battlefield. Laura greeted me at the door, her face pale and drawn. "She's in her room," she said quietly. I nodded, stepping inside and following her down the hall. When we reached the door, Laura knocked softly. "Lily, sweetie, there's someone here to see you." The door opened, and there she was, a girl with bright green eyes that mirrored my own and a hesitant smile that reminded me of Laura. My heart clenched as I realized just how much of myself I saw in her. "Hi," I said, my voice shaky. "I'm Alex." She tilted her head, confused. "Mom said you're helping with my treatment," she said cautiously. "Are you her friend?" Laura placed a hand on Lily's shoulder, her voice trembling. "No, sweetheart. He's your father." Lily's eyes widened, and she looked at me, then back at Laura. "What?" she whispered. "What do you mean?" I crouched down to her level, my heart breaking as I saw the confusion and fear in her expression. "I didn't know about you until now," I said gently. "But I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." She stared at me for a long moment, her lips trembling. "You're really my dad?" I nodded, tears threatening to spill. "I am, and I'm so sorry I wasn't here sooner." To my surprise, Lily stepped forward and hugged me. It was tentative at first, but then her arms tightened around me, and I felt the floodgates open. I held her close, silently vowing to make up for every moment I had missed. As I left Laura's apartment that day, Lily's hug still fresh in my mind, I knew one thing for certain. My life would never be the same. This was no longer about Laura or the past. It was about Lily, and I was determined to be the father she deserved, no matter what it took. The days after meeting Lily were a whirlwind of emotions. I couldn't stop replaying the moment she hugged me, the way her small arms wrapped around me as if she had been waiting for me her entire life. It broke me and healed me all at once. Laura and I agreed to work together for Lily's sake, but the tension between us was impossible to ignore. Every time we spoke, there was a reminder of the betrayal, of the years stolen from me. I made it clear that my involvement in Lily's life had nothing to do with forgiveness. It was all about her. Over the next week, I spent as much time with Lily as I could. We talked about her favorite books, her love for painting, and her dreams of becoming a veterinarian. She was smart, funny, and so full of life. Despite everything she was going through, it amazed me how much we connected in such a short time. One evening, while we were painting together at the hospital's art therapy class, she turned to me and asked, "Why didn't you come sooner?" The question hit me like a punch to the gut. "I didn't know about you," I said honestly. "If I had, I would have been here from the start." She frowned, her little brows furrowing. "Mom said you were busy with work." I froze. Laura had lied to her, even now. "Lily," I said gently, "there's a lot we need to talk about, but I promise you I'll never leave you again." She nodded, her trust in me unwavering. It was a trust one didn't take lightly. Later that week, Laura and I had another tense conversation.